The stethoscope inside the farewell gift box still had dried blood on it. When the new hospital director pressed it against the wooden desk, everyone in the room heard a child's heartbeat coming through. The blood wasn't just decades old, it was impossible. The heartbeat belonged to a patient who had died in 1943. Dr. Caroline Weiss stood frozen, her hand trembling as she held the ancient medical instrument against the polished mahogany surface. The rhythmic thumping echoed through the conference room where 30 staff members had gathered for the retirement ceremony. What had begun as a light-hearted celebration for the outgoing hospital director had transformed into something horrifying. The stethoscope, a gift meant to commemorate Dr. Helmut Strauss's 40 years of service, was now broadcasting something that defied explanation. That's impossible," whispered Dr. Weiss, her face draining of color as she lifted the instrument from the desk.
The sound stopped immediately, but when she placed it down again, the rhythmic beating returned, louder this time, causing several nurses to back away from the table. Dr. Strauss, the 72-year-old outgoing director who had been smiling just moments before, now stared at the stethoscope with a look of absolute terror. His hands began to shake uncontrollably, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead, despite the room's cool temperature. Before anyone could say anything more, he collapsed into his chair, clutching his chest. "Someone get help!" shouted the hospital's head of cardiology, rushing to Strauss's side. But the elderly doctor waved him away, his eyes never leaving the stethoscope. "They've found me," he whispered, his German accent, normally barely noticeable after 50 years in America, suddenly pronounced.
"All these years, and they've finally found me." Dr. Marcus Reynolds, the hospital's most respected historian and ethics professor, stepped forward cautiously. As a specialist in medical history with 3 published books on World War II medical atrocities, he immediately recognized the significance of what was happening. The stethoscope, with its distinctive brass bell and aged rubber tubing, was not just any medical instrument. It appeared to be a Rieger-Bolz-Nadel, standard issue for German military doctors during the war. "Dr. Strauss," Reynolds said quietly, "would you like to tell us about this stethoscope?" His voice was measured, but those who knew him well could detect the underlying tension. The room fell silent, except for the impossible heartbeat still emanating from the desk. Strauss looked up, his eyes reflecting decades of buried guilt. "It was never supposed to come back," he said. "I buried it myself, in the ground behind Barracks 4. No one could have found it. Security personnel had been called, but they stood uncertainly at the door, unsure how to respond to the bizarre situation unfolding before them. The hospital administrator reached for the stethoscope, but Dr. Reynolds stopped her. "Don't touch it," he warned. "This might be evidence." "Evidence of what?" asked one of the younger doctors. "What's happening?" Reynolds glanced at Strauss, whose breathing had become labored. "I believe we're witnessing the past catching up with the present." He turned to the room. "Everyone except Dr. Weiss and security should leave now." As the room cleared reluctantly, Strauss suddenly grabbed Reynolds' wrist with surprising strength. "You know, don't you?" he hissed. "You've always suspected." Reynolds nodded grimly. The coincidences were too many. A German doctor who changed his name after immigrating in 1947. The missing years in your curriculum vitae. Your specialized knowledge of hypothermia that you could never quite explain how you acquired. What happened next shocked everyone remaining in the room. The heartbeat from the stethoscope began to accelerate, growing louder until it was pounding like a drum. Then a child's voice, speaking in Polish, emerged clearly through the instrument. "Subject 227, temperature 28 degrees Celsius, heart rate slowing, estimated time until cardiac arrest 4 minutes." Dr. Strauss let out a strangled cry and fell forward, his forehead hitting the table with a dull thud. Security rushed forward, but it was too late. His pulse was gone. The hospital director had died of apparent cardiac arrest, while the heartbeat from the stethoscope continued its relentless rhythm. Within hours, the hospital wing was sealed off. Federal agents arrived by nightfall, along with specialists from the Simon Wiesenthal Center and the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. The stethoscope was placed in a specialized container, though strangely, the heartbeat could still be heard through the reinforced walls. Dr. Reynolds, now serving as the primary liaison between the hospital and investigators, explained what they were dealing with. We believe Dr. Strauss was previously known as Dr. Heinrich Müller, an assistant physician at Auschwitz-Birkenau who specialized in human experimentation, particularly hypothermia studies. The lead investigator, Agent Sarah Goldstein, whose own grandparents had survived Auschwitz, stared at the container housing the stethoscope. "How is this possible? The sound, the voice." Reynolds shook his head. "Scientifically, it's not. But I've studied enough cases to know that sometimes the past refuses to stay buried, especially when that past involves such unimaginable horror." What the investigators discovered in Strauss's home that night would shake the foundations of modern medical ethics and challenge our understanding of how trauma imprints itself on the physical world. In a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards of his study, agents found a metal box containing a journal written in meticulous German handwriting, dozens of photographs, and a small leather case containing a collection of numbered metal tags. Each tag had a single number stamped onto it, matching entries in the journal. "These aren't dog tags," Agent Goldstein said, her voice cracking as she examined them. "These are patient identification numbers from the camp." The journal entries, when translated, revealed horrifying details of experiments conducted on children to determine how long the human body could survive in freezing conditions. Each entry was clinical, detached, recording temperature, heart rate, respiration, and time of death. Subject 227, the voice they had heard through the stethoscope, was a 7-year-old boy named Jakub. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. When forensic technicians examined the stethoscope more carefully, they found something that defied explanation. The rubber tubing contained microscopic remnants of not just blood, but living cells. Cells that, according to preliminary DNA analysis, matched samples taken from relatives of Holocaust victims who had provided their genetic information to the Holocaust Remembrance Database. "These cells shouldn't be alive," explained the lead forensic scientist, Dr. Ella Chen, her hands shaking as she read the results. "They're over 70 years old. It's biologically impossible." Yet, when examined under a microscope, the cells pulsed with life, contracting and expanding in the same rhythm as the heartbeat that continued to emanate from the stethoscope. More inexplicably, when the instrument was placed against different surfaces, different voices emerged. All children, all speaking different languages, all reciting their subject numbers and vital statistics. 3 days into the investigation, something even more inexplicable occurred. Dr. Reynolds was examining the journal late at night when he noticed a pattern in the patient numbers. They corresponded to dates, specifically the dates when each child had died in the experiments. Subject 227 died on February 27, 1943, he explained to Agent Goldstein the next morning. Subject 115 died on January 15th. The pattern holds for all of them. "What's the significance?" Goldstein asked. "Today is August 13th. Reynolds replied, his face grim, "and there's a subject 813 in the journal." They rushed to where the stethoscope was being kept, and as the clock struck noon, the heartbeat changed its rhythm. A new voice emerged, a girl, perhaps 10 years old, speaking Romanian. According to the journal, subject 813 had been a Romanian girl named Elena, who had survived for an unprecedented 3 hours in near-freezing water before her heart finally stopped. "He's killing them again," whispered Agent Goldstein. "Somehow, through this object, he's forcing them to relive their deaths, even after he's gone." The investigation took another turn when the team discovered that Dr. Strauss had made annual trips to Poland for the past 20 years, always in late August.
According to his credit card records, he had visited the site of the former concentration camp each time, but what he did there remained unknown until they found the videos. Hidden in an encrypted file on his personal laptop, investigators discovered dozens of video recordings of Strauss at the campsite. In each one, he could be seen kneeling at different locations, the stethoscope pressed against the ground, listening intently. "I can still hear them," he whispered in one recording dated 3 years earlier. "All of them, their hearts still beating beneath the soil. Why won't they stop? I've apologized. I've dedicated my life to saving others. What more can I do to silence them?" In the final video, recorded just 2 weeks before his retirement, Strauss appeared haggard, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. "I'm being followed now," he said directly to the camera, "not by people, by something else. I see them in my peripheral vision, small shadows moving just out of sight. At night, I hear breathing beside my bed, cold breath." The breath of children who are freezing to death, over and over. He held up the stethoscope, the same one that had appeared in the retirement gift box. "I buried this again yesterday, deeper than before, but this morning it was on my hotel nightstand. I can't escape it. I can't escape them." The video ended with Strauss looking over his shoulder in terror at something the camera couldn't capture. 5 weeks into the investigation, another breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A 96-year-old survivor named Eliza Berger contacted the investigation team after seeing a news report about the case. Though frail in body, her mind remained sharp, and she remembered Dr. Mueller, the man who would later become Strauss, with perfect clarity. "He had this ritual," she explained during her interview, her aged hands trembling as she clutched a cup of tea. "Before each experiment, he would place his stethoscope on the child's chest and say, 'Your heart will tell me everything I need to know.' Then, after they died, he would listen again and write in his book. But one day, it was with the Romanian girl, something happened. According to Berger, who had been forced to assist in the medical block, the girl had appeared to die, but then suddenly gasped and grabbed the stethoscope from Mueller's hands. She looked him in the eyes and said something none of us understood. Not in Romanian or German or Polish. It sounded ancient. Then she pressed the stethoscope against his chest and died again, for real this time. After that, Mueller changed. He became obsessed with the stethoscope, claiming he could hear the girl's heart still beating through it, along with the others. He would wake up screaming in his quarters. The other doctors thought he was losing his mind. When asked what had happened to Mueller after that, Berger's expression darkened. "He disappeared before the camp was liberated, took the stethoscope with him. Some said he was transferred, others that he fled. We assumed he died somewhere, hopefully in pain." Agent Goldstein showed Berger a photograph of Dr. Strauss from 20 years earlier. The old woman's reaction was immediate and visceral. She recoiled as if struck, then spat on the floor. "That's him," she hissed. "Older, but those eyes. I would know those eyes anywhere. They were always so curious, like we weren't human to him, just interesting specimens." The final piece of the puzzle came when the team deciphered the last section of Strauss's journal, written in a coded script that had initially been mistaken for medical shorthand. In it, he described what had really happened with Elena, subject 813. "The girl spoke a curse," he had written. "I recognized it from my studies of ancient Romanian folklore during university. She bound her soul and the souls of the others to the stethoscope, declaring that I would hear their hearts beating for eternity, that I would never escape what I had done. I didn't believe in such superstitions, but now I hear them constantly, not just through the instrument, but in my head, their heartbeats, their breathing, the sounds of their frozen limbs cracking as they move in the ice water. I tried destroying the stethoscope once, melted it down in 1963. 3 days later, it was on my bedside table, fully restored." The journal's final entry, dated 1 day before his retirement ceremony, was just 3 sentences. "They're coming for me tomorrow. They found a way through. May God have mercy on my soul, though I deserve none." 2 months after Strauss's death, the supernatural phenomena surrounding the stethoscope had not abated. If anything, they had intensified. The heartbeats and voices continued, now following a pattern that matched the dates in the journal perfectly. More disturbing still, forensic analysis of Strauss's body revealed something inexplicable. His heart showed signs of extreme freezing, as if it had been subjected to the same conditions as his victims, despite no evidence of such exposure before his death. Then came the reports from hospital staff who had been present at the retirement ceremony. One by one, they began experiencing the same symptoms, hearing heartbeats when alone, feeling a cold presence beside their beds at night, discovering their breath fogging in warm rooms. 2 nurses resigned after claiming to see children in wet, striped uniforms standing at the foot of their beds. Dr. Reynolds, who had immersed himself in the investigation, was the most severely affected. During an interview with Agent Goldstein, he suddenly stopped mid-sentence, his eyes tracking something invisible across the room. "Do you see them?" he whispered. "They're here now, watching us." When Goldstein said she saw nothing, Reynolds looked at her in disbelief. "They're standing right there, 7 of them, soaking wet, blue lips, staring at us." He began backing away, bumping into furniture as he retreated from phantoms only he could see. The next morning, Reynolds was found in his bathtub, unconscious and suffering from severe hypothermia, despite the water being barely an inch deep and at room temperature. His body temperature had dropped to 28 degrees Celsius, exactly the same as subject 227's final reading. After recovering, Reynolds insisted on continuing his work, though he now required constant monitoring. "They're not trying to harm me," he explained to the psychiatric team evaluating him. "They're trying to make me understand, to feel what they felt."
To be a witness. 3 months into the investigation, a decision was made to contain the stethoscope in a specially designed vault at a secure government facility. The container was equipped with audio sensors to continue monitoring the phenomena. But the night before the transfer was to take place, security cameras captured an inexplicable event. The sealed container opened by itself. The stethoscope rose into the air, suspended by nothing visible, and then simply vanished. The entire incident lasted less than 10 seconds. That same night, hundreds of reports flooded emergency services across the country. People with no connection to the investigation, to Strauss, or to each other, all reported the same thing: the sound of a stethoscope being placed against their chests, followed by a child's voice whispering, "Your heart will tell me everything I need to know." Most disturbing of all, many of these people were doctors, specifically doctors who had engaged in questionable ethical practices, whose names appeared in lawsuits for malpractice, or who had published research with methodologies that skirted ethical boundaries. 6 months after Strauss's death, the investigation officially concluded with more questions than answers. The stethoscope was never recovered. Dr. Reynolds published his findings in a controversial paper that cost him his academic standing, but became an underground sensation in both medical and paranormal circles. Agent Goldstein, who had remained skeptical throughout the investigation, despite witnessing inexplicable events, made one final visit to Eliza Berger before the case file was closed. She found the elderly survivor sitting calmly in her nursing home room, a small smile on her face. "They found him," Berger said before Goldstein could speak. "After all these years, they found him, and they made him feel what they felt. Justice comes in many forms, Agent Goldstein. Sometimes it takes decades. Sometimes it comes from beyond the grave." "You knew this would happen," Goldstein said, realization dawning. "Somehow you knew." Berger's smile widened slightly. "Elena told me what she had done in those last moments. Her family had been Roma, travelers who kept the old ways, the old magic. She made me promise to keep watch, to be ready when he was found." She reached into the drawer beside her bed and pulled out a small yellowed piece of paper. "She gave me this." Set to burn it when it was over. On the paper was a crude drawing of a stethoscope with 13 small circles around it. 13 victims who never forgot, Berger explained. 13 souls who waited patiently for their moment. She struck a match and held it to the paper, which caught fire immediately, burning with an unusually bright blue flame. As Agent Goldstein left the nursing home, her phone rang with a news alert. Across the country, 13 doctors had been found dead in their homes or offices, all from apparent hypothermia despite normal indoor temperatures. Each had a small, unexplained ice burn on their chest, in the exact shape of a stethoscope's resonator. The final report on what became known as the Strauss case was classified at the highest level. Only a handful of people know that to this day, on the anniversary of each victim's death, anyone who visits the memorial at the former campsite can hear the faint sound of a heartbeat coming from beneath the ground, a heartbeat that grows stronger as the visitor places their ear to the earth, as if something below is listening just as intently to them. But perhaps most chilling of all is what happened to the contents of Strauss's hidden box. The photographs, journal, and identification tags were secured in an evidence room at Quantico until one morning when agents arrived to find the box empty except for a small puddle of water and 13 perfectly formed ice crystals. The case remains officially unsolved. But in hospitals across the world, medical students now tell each other the story of the haunted stethoscope as a warning against the abuse of medical power. Many dismiss it as merely a ghost story, an urban legend that serves a moral purpose. Yet every year, on August 13th, medical professionals report the same phenomenon. For just a moment, all stethoscopes fall silent, unable to transmit the sounds of living hearts. And in that silence, some claim to hear a child's voice asking a simple question. Can you feel the cold coming? Can you feel your heart slowing down? Do you believe objects can absorb the trauma of their past, carrying echoes of suffering across decades? Have you ever experienced a moment when something seemingly inanimate seemed to carry a presence, a memory, or a message from long ago? If this story chilled your blood, make sure to leave a comment below describing which moment disturbed you most. Subscribe to our channel for more true historical horrors that time has tried to bury. And remember, sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't supernatural beings, but the humans who choose to inflict suffering on the innocent. The past may be gone, but as Dr. Strauss discovered, it never truly dies.